There's a moment a lot of people have in their early 60s that they don't really talk about out loud. It usually happens on an ordinary day, nothing special. You're sitting at the table with the mail spread out bank statement, maybe a Medicare flyer you didn't ask for, something from Social Security, and you realize you've been staring at the same numbers for a little too long. Not because they're shocking, just because they feel final in a way they never did before. You might still be working, you might be semi-retired, you might already be fully out of the workforce, but the question sneaks in anyway: is this sustainable, not just financially, but emotionally, energy-wise, life-wise? You start thinking in longer stretches of time, 5 years, 10 years, 20. You wonder how much flexibility you really have. You wonder if you should be more careful, or if you've already been careful long enough. And what's strange is, no one ever told you retirement would feel like this. It's not fear exactly. It's more like standing at the edge of a new season and realizing there's no map taped to the door. My name is Robert, and I spend a lot of time thinking about money, aging, and why this particular phase of life feels so disorienting for some people and surprisingly calm for others. And what I've noticed, again and again, is that the difference usually isn't about intelligence or discipline or even savings. It's about understanding what actually changes once you hit certain ages, especially 62. Because 62 isn't just another birthday, it's a hinge point, quiet, subtle, but real. It's when options appear that didn't exist before. It's when decisions stop being theoretical. It's when money starts behaving differently in your life, not because the rules changed overnight, but because you did. What I want to talk about is what really shifts after 62, not the surface-level stuff you can Google in 5 minutes, but the internal changes, the way your priorities rearrange themselves, the way risk feels different, the way time starts to matter more than numbers. This isn't about telling you what to do. It's about helping you see what's already happening, so you can move forward with a little more clarity, a little more confidence, and a lot less background anxiety. And honestly, once you see it, you can't unsee it. When people talk about turning 62, the first thing that comes up is Social Security. That's the headline. That's the milestone everyone circles on the calendar. You can finally claim. And yes, technically that's true. At 62, the door opens. You're allowed to start taking benefits, but what most people don't realize is that this door doesn't lead to a single room. It opens into a hallway full of choices, trade-offs, and long-term consequences. I've talked to people who felt an almost physical sense of relief when they realized they could claim. Not that they necessarily needed to, just knowing it was there felt like a safety net finally being stretched beneath them. And that feeling matters. It changes how risky or safe the future feels. But here's the quiet part no one emphasizes enough. Claiming at 62 permanently reshapes your income for the rest of your life. Not temporarily, not for a few years, forever. When you claim early, your monthly benefit is reduced. That reduction sticks. And it affects more than just your paycheck. It affects how secure you feel at 70, at 75, at 85. It affects how you handle healthcare costs, inflation, and unexpected expenses down the road. Now, that doesn't mean claiming at 62 is wrong. Sometimes it's absolutely the right move: health issues, job loss, caregiving responsibilities, sheer exhaustion. Life doesn't always line up with the optimal math. But what really changes at 62 is that you stop being in theory and start being in reality. The decisions stop being hypothetical, they become personal. And suddenly, money isn't about maximizing returns anymore. It's about fit asterisk. Does this choice fit my life? Does it let me sleep at night? Does it give me flexibility if something changes? That's the shift. Before 62, retirement planning feels abstract. After 62, it becomes intimate. The best advice I can give here is simple. Don't rush just because the door is open. Stand in the doorway for a bit. Run the numbers, talk it through. Ask yourself not just can I claim, but what kind of future am I buying with this choice? Because after 62, the decisions you make start echoing forward. And understanding that, really understanding it, is one of the biggest changes of all. One of the strangest things that happens after 62 isn't financial at all. It's psychological. For most of your adult life, work has been the default setting. Even when you hated your job, even when you counted the days until vacation. Work was the background noise of life, the structure, the reason Tuesdays existed. After 62, that default quietly dissolves. Maybe you're still working, maybe you're part-time, maybe you're fully retired, but something shifts in how you relate to work. It's no longer something you assume you'll do forever. It becomes optional, negotiable, temporary. And that can feel freeing or unsettling or both. I've heard people say, I didn't realize how much of my identity was tied up in my job until it was gone. And that realization doesn't always hit on the first day of retirement. Sometimes it sneaks up months later, when you're standing in line at the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon and suddenly realize, oh, I don't belong anywhere at a certain time anymore. That's not a crisis, it's a transition. After 62, time becomes something you own in a new way, and ownership is responsibility. You have to decide what fills the day, what gives it shape, what makes it feel meaningful. Financially, this matters more than people expect because boredom is expensive, so is restlessness. People who don't plan for how they'll spend their time often end up spending more money trying to fill the gap, eating out, impulse travel, unnecessary upgrades. The people who do best after 62 tend to create gentle structure, not a rigid schedule, just anchors, volunteer work, a regular walk, a weekly lunch with someone who knows their story, small reasons to get up and engage. If you're still working, the shift is just as real. You're not working because you have to anymore, even if you do need the income. You're working because it fits your life right now, and that mental shift can make work feel lighter, even when the job itself hasn't changed. After 62, work stops being who you are. It becomes something you choose or release on your own terms, and that's a bigger change than most people expect. For decades, money was about building, saving, accumulating, watching balances go up, or at least hoping they would. After 62, something subtle but important shifts. Money becomes less about how much you have and more about how it moves. Cash flow starts to matter more than net worth. You might have a decent nest egg on paper, but what really determines how comfortable you feel is whether income lines up with expenses month after month. Social security timing, pensions, withdrawals, part-time income, it all becomes a choreography instead of a scoreboard. And this is where a lot of anxiety lies. People will say, I have enough, but I don't feel like I have enough. Usually what they mean is they're unsure how sustainable their income really is. After 62, it's not about squeezing every last dollar out of your investments. It's about creating a rhythm that feels predictable, bills paid, groceries covered, a little margin for the unexpected. This is also when simplicity becomes valuable. Fewer accounts, fewer moving parts, clearer understanding of where money comes from and where it goes. You don't need complexity anymore, you need clarity. A practical step here, and it sounds boring but it's powerful, is to map out your actual monthly flow. Not an estimate, not a hopeful version, the real numbers, then see how stable it is. When people do this, something interesting happens. The fear often drops, not because everything is perfect, but because uncertainty shrinks. After 62, money stops being a scoreboard and starts being a tool. And once you see it that way, you can start using it with more confidence and less fear. Before your 60s, healthcare is mostly theoretical. You have insurance. You go to the doctor when you have to. You assume things will work out. After 62, healthcare becomes closer, more present. You start noticing what prescriptions actually cost. You pay attention to networks. You think about Medicare, supplemental plans, out-of-pocket limits. You hear stories from friends, the good ones and the scary ones. And it's not just about cost, it's about energy, recovery time, the way your body responds differently than it used to. This isn't something to fear, it's something to plan for calmly. The people who feel most at ease in their later years are rarely the healthiest ones. They're the ones who understand their coverage, their options, and their likely costs. After 62, healthcare planning becomes part of financial planning. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away. Understanding it makes everything else feel steadier. A simple step here is to learn your Medicare timeline early, not just when you turn 65, but how decisions before that affect what comes next. Penalties, enrollment windows, coverage gaps, none of it is intuitive, and that's okay. What matters is not mastering it all, just being engaged enough that nothing surprises you. Because after 62, peace of mind often comes from reducing surprises, not eliminating risk. Risk feels different after 62, not because you suddenly become fearful, but because you've lived long enough to know how unpredictable life can be. Market swings hit differently, big purchase. Carry more weight, starting over sounds less appealing than it used to. This doesn't mean you stop taking risks, it means you take thoughtful asterisk ones. Financially, this often shows up as a desire for stability, less volatility, more certainty, not because you're conservative, but because you value peace. Emotionally, it shows up as saying no more often, no to draining obligations, no to unnecessary stress, no to things that don't align with how you want to spend your time. And here's the important part, this is wisdom, not decline. After 62, your tolerance for nonsense drops, and that's a gift. The key is to adjust your financial life to match that wisdom, simpler portfolios, clearer plans, more predictable income. Not because growth is bad, but because sleep is good. When risk is aligned with your actual life, not a spreadsheet, everything feels more manageable. One of the most surprising changes after 62 is how hard it can be to spend money. You've spent decades being careful, saving, saying no, delaying gratification. And suddenly you're in the phase of life where the money is supposed to be used, and that feels uncomfortable. People will say, I can afford it, but I just can't bring myself to do it. A trip, a nicer car, help for a grandchild. This isn't about math, it's about identity. After 62, spending works best when it's intentional, when you give yourself asterisk permission ahead of time. Instead of asking, can I afford this, you ask, is this what my money is for? When spending aligns with values, experiences, comfort, generosity, it feels lighter, less guilty, more satisfying. Money becomes a support for life, not a score to protect. After 62, you start to feel time differently. Not in a morbid way, just more clearly. You notice seasons, energy levels, the way weeks pass faster than they used to. And that awareness changes priorities. You start choosing convenience over optimization, relationships over obligations, rest over hustle. Financial decisions follow that shift. You're willing to pay for simplicity, to avoid stress, to protect energy. This isn't giving up, it's refining. Time becomes the most precious asset you have, and money becomes the tool that protects it. In the end, what really changes after 62 is the goal. It's no longer about winning, or maximizing, or proving anything. It's about peace. Knowing your bills are covered, your healthcare is handled, your time is your own. That peace doesn't come from perfection, it comes from understanding, from making informed choices and accepting trade-offs. And once you stop chasing an ideal version of retirement and start building a asterisk livable asterisk one, everything softens. Turning 62 doesn't flip a switch. It doesn't suddenly make life easy or hard or clear or confusing. What it does is change the asterisk context asterisk. It moves you from planning to living, from theory to reality, from someday to now. Money becomes less about growth and more about flow. Work becomes optional, time becomes visible, healthcare becomes real, risk becomes personal, spending becomes intentional. And through all of it, there's this quiet opportunity to build a life that fits who you are asterisk now asterisk, not who you were at 40 or 50. If you take anything away from this, let it be this. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just have to be paying attention. Small adjustments, thoughtful choices, honest conversations with yourself, with your family, with the people you trust. After 62, the goal isn't to control the future. It's to feel steady inside it. And that, more than any number on a statement, is what really changes.